Game over.
Hello and welcome guys, this is Raiden back again with a special video here today. This is a topic I've had on my mind for quite some time now, and I figured, why not now? And it is why I believe the Friday the 13th franchise is actually a better overall franchise than Halloween. Now please don't get mad yet, I'm going to explain exactly why I believe that. Now, we all know that the original 1978 classic from John Carpenter is a staple of horror. There is absolutely no argument there. It is the better film between both franchises overall. It really is. I mean, I can't really say you can argue that. It's just such a well-crafted, just well-made product from John Carpenter with the atmosphere, the music, the characters. There's really just no downside to that film whatsoever. We all know also that Friday the 13th is very much a byproduct of what Halloween was. It is a copy. It was a way to cash in on the success of Halloween, but it's one of those rare cases where, in a sense, it kind of outdid it, or at least is on that level. To where the main antagonist is just as successful as Michael Myers, that being Jason Voorhees, originally, of course, being Pamela Voorhees, but that's just one of the many interesting ways as to why that franchise had evolved, and I'll get to that point a little later. But yeah, I mean, Halloween, it is the better film. Friday the 13th is a not so great film. But the reason why I believe that franchise is better, well, that's one of the reasons why, is because Halloween, it set such a standard for itself. It's such a simplistic idea. And knowing John Carpenter's original intention of that one film, and knowing what Michael is, knowing it's very much grounded in reality, knowing it's kind of blurring that line of, is Michael possessed? Is he just naturally evil? And this just explains what, I mean, he got shot 6 times by the end of the original film. He fell off the balcony. We all know that. Things that are, you would consider survivable, at least for someone who's not quite of this world. You know, again, it kind of blurs the lines of what is Michael, but again, it's such a simplistic, well-made idea, and it works best for the most part on its own, where sequels can kind of drag down the idea. You can only kind of do so much. Friday the 13th, on the other hand, well, we all know where that started. We know Jason was not the original killer. It was Pamela. She was going around killing these counselors, and then the sequel happens, and then that's where we finally get the appearance of Jason, where he's the killer. He's this backwoods hillbilly just going on to continue what his mom did for revenge, you know, whatever. And then you get to the third film where he's again, it's still not to the quality of Halloween by any stretch of the imagination. It's the third one. It's this 3D gimmicky film, and yeah, he's more of a hulking body type, to where, like, yeah, you put him up against Michael, I would say that Jason has the better odds, and that's Jason in human form as well as zombie form. But I feel like the consistency, the entertainment value from those earlier Friday the 13th films carries more weight than that of Halloween. And the reason being is because the bar was set much lower from the start, because the first one is not that well made of a film. It's very simple like Halloween, but it doesn't quite hit that level. It's just barely there, just because, I mean, just some of the music cues, of course, and just some of the ideas behind it, and what that sequel implemented after the fact. Because again, it wasn't even Jason from the start, it was Pamela. And we didn't even really get full on Friday the 13th as we know it now until like the fourth film, which was meant to be, of course, the final chapter. That's when we got the truest form of Jason imaginable. You could probably even argue for part 6 once he became zombified, so to speak. And so it constantly kind of changed itself, and it wasn't as You could argue the first one was grounded. I know a lot of people would say like, "Oh, Pamela, how does she throw these people around? How does she, overpower a lot of these grown adults, these men and stuff like that?" A lot of times, it's just like, well, it's just like that's neither here nor, So it wasn't really, again, as grounded. It didn't really, it wasn't as subtle in that sense, and that's why I feel like those first several films are consistently more entertaining, because I feel like part two is actually a somewhat better made version of part one. And then you go to two, and then you go to three, and that's when, of course, he gets his hockey mask. So Jason at this point already is already he's evolving. He's evolving from what it was at the beginning. You start with his mother, you get Jason with the bag head. The third one, you get Jason with the hockey mask, just doing more of his thing, and is still as silly as some of the filmmaking actually was. They all kind of remain on this consistent level of entertainment. Whereas Halloween, you get to Halloween 2, and I know a lot of people love Halloween 2 and still regard it as one of the better films, and I'm not really going to argue that. But for me personally, I feel like Halloween 2 never quite excited me as much as Halloween 1, or even as much as what most fans would say. I still like it. I still think it's solid. But to me, I felt like, because since it was 81 and Friday the 13th had already come out, I felt like it was almost too much of a standard 80s slasher by that point, because I feel like a lot of the supporting characters were, for the most part, cannon fodder. They didn't quite have that level of personality that you had with Laurie's friends, that being Annie and Linda, and even, but you did have Donald Pleasance there. You did have him, and even Laurie. She's kind of laid out in days throughout most of the movie, so you really don't get much with her. So as far as characters, just as far as that little extra bit, Halloween 2 was a bit lackluster for me, and so therefore was already on the downturn. And that was meant to be the end as well. And then we get to that part 3, Season of the Witch, which is, of course, it's entirely its own entity by that point. And so with Friday the 13th, it's like, okay, you go from 1 to 2. 2 to me is an improvement. 3, not technically as much improvement on that level, but at least the entertainment value is there. You're getting more Jason. You're getting the hockey mask for the first time. You're getting some fun kills. You're getting your money's worth, I would say. Then you get to the final chapter, which again, many fans would consider this to be the best one. And again, I couldn't argue that. I could balance that out between that one and part 6 for me personally. Part 2 is probably very close behind those. And so, yeah, I mean, by that point, you're actually going on an upward scale in a lot of ways. And then you get to part 5, which again, that's a bit shaky. You can regard it, you cannot, doesn't matter. And then you get to part 6, and it's like, wow, this is taking it to a whole nother level. You could, again, argue it's the best one, and it's just a lot of fun. And this is again where you could say Jason took that next step into his evolution, where he became the zombified version. This is the Jason that we know. This is the Jason that led all the way up to Freddy versus Jason, and the one that would be most believable, to take the most hits, to be able to take the most incoming damage and all that stuff. So this is Jason pretty much at his fullest form by this point. And so that's why I like, again, just getting to that point, why I feel like overall this franchise is a lot stronger, because again, when you get to Halloween, the more explanation, the more things begin to happen with Michael. They start to over explain, and then you kind of lose that sense of more grounded reality with the character. And so by the time you get to part 4, it's like, okay, that's actually a pretty solid movie. But then that's when you start hinting at the whole Man in Black. And then moving on to part 5, you start to get a little more of that, you get the tattoo, and they're starting to lead a lot more into that whole over explaining and kind of taking away from the grounded reality of it. And of course, even Loomis himself takes steps back in terms of his likability, in terms of, what this character should be. And then, of course, 6, it's just like way too much, and it just starts to falter quite a bit. And then following that with H2O, what is that? It's basically erasing all that previous stuff and then coming off of part 2 as opposed to part 5. And it just, you see what I mean? It starts to falter because, again, because the quality was so high and the idea was so simplistic, it stumbles. Where Friday the 13th, again, from the start, was lower quality, the standards were lower, but there was more room to play with, is because Jason, we don't really know the true concept of Jason, like I said, but in terms of how much he can endure. I mean, yeah, it's like again, he was human at the start, sure, but he's a bigger guy, and he's just, even some would argue from the beginning, it's just like, well, maybe he was just undead. We don't know. But then he again became undead, and again, where supernatural elements can play very much into the franchise. And so even with that, with New Blood, where it's not a great, but then again, not quite terrible. It's really just a lot of the cuts of the gore that's taken out of it. But regardless, that's where you get Kane Hodder, and you get a newly redesigned, just one of the better looking designs of Jason. And again, where the upwards track is just kind of there. It starts to teeter a bit, and then you get to part 8, and then 9, and then it starts to... But even for me, once you get to Jason X, another film which I personally enjoy, it is what it is. It holds its entertainment value. I think it's more entertaining than 9 and 8. And so again, you just kind of get this variety where you get, the Baghead Jason, you get Hockey Mask Jason, you get Undead Jason, you get Jason in space, you get Uber Jason, you get Jason fighting Freddy Krueger. Overall, that's why I feel like it has better variety. It has more consistency of entertainment value going throughout, because you don't have to take it as seriously, to where you can play around with ideas and it can still work within the realm in which it sets itself up as. Where Halloween, again, you do too much and the concept is going to dwindle and it's going to suffer. Halloween Resurrection, again, even some now at this point would say H2O is a bit lackluster. It's fine, not terrible, but not as great as probably what it was at that time. And then you get to Halloween 2018, solid Halloween film. I know some people are split on that, but at least it goes back to the basics. It goes back to Halloween in its truest form. And of course, we got 2 more films coming, Halloween Kills, at least from what we've heard so far. It seems like it could actually be pretty great, but we shall see. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of the reasons as to why I believe Friday the 13th holds a far more entertainment value than Halloween. Because plus, also, you have more films at this point, and again, you get more variety, where I feel like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, 9 are just kind of... And then Jason X, for me, holds more entertainment value. And then Freddy vs. Jason, again, fun as hell flick. I mean, it is what it is. You get Freddy fighting Jason. What more do you really want? And the remake, again, to me, I don't think the remake is by any means the black sheep of the franchise. I think that title could easily belong to others, but that's just my opinion. So yeah, I mean, Halloween, first one's great. Second, yeah. Halloween 3, even that one as its own thing, it's like kind of, it's all right, but even that doesn't count because it's not Michael Myers. Halloween 4, solid. 5, 6, fun. It's interesting, that's for sure. But H2O, yeah, okay. Resurrection, don't even get me started. You get even the remakes. I mean, I'm okay on the first one. Second one, yeah, not so much. And then you get 2018, which I think is pretty good. So like I said, I just feel like the consistency, the more entertainment value lies with Friday the 13th. And again, that is not a knock on the Halloween franchise by any stretch. I love Michael Myers. I love the franchise. I love the lore. It's just, it's kind of, as far as franchises go, it's a victim of its own success with that first movie and what that first movie set itself up to be. That's pretty much it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. It's a bit rambly, I know. I'm trying to go through as much of the points as I can. I just want it to be as natural as possible. But I think you get the idea as to what I'm saying. Please be sure to like, comment, and or subscribe if you would. I would greatly appreciate it. We have a lot more coming. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.